Well, okay, so 1994, my late husband, Stevens, and myself came back, right? So we decided to say, okay, let's start this business. And in November, we started the business. So November, what we did was we rented a small room from my father's office. So my father has an office, my late father had an office, and my late father was also in publishing, but he was doing like children's books and some kind of other publishing work. So we said, where are we going to start? So he said, okay, you can rent my office. So we rented one room, so just two of us, and we had 20,000 ringgit in our bank account. So we came back with 20,000 ringgit. And how do we start this business? So my father said, okay, you can rent the office for free from now, right? So we started there. And the first magazine that we launched in this business was Hospitality Asia. So at that time, we hired a writer who was doing all the writing for us. And then Stevens and I were doing the sales. So we were out doing all the marketing and sales, getting all the advertisers in. Thank God for our ex-clients in Singapore who supported us and said, okay, we'll support you. It's a good move, right? So back then in Malaysia, there was no trade magazines for hospitality. And they didn't really know about trade magazines, like what is a trade publication? A lot of the magazines were B2C. And we explained to them and said, well, it's a trade magazine, it's a B2B, so we're creating this hospitality magazine that are meant for the hoteliers and the owners and the operators to read, to know what's available, in terms of the supplies, like bed linens and beddings and food ingredients and, cutleries and tablewares and that sort of stuff. So those were our advertisers then. And then we hired somebody to do the database. So we needed to make sure that we get all the contacts of the hoteliers, the restaurateurs, the spas, and everybody else, because we needed a database. Because it's a magazine that had to be sent directly to the buyers, the potential buyers, and that was the USP of the magazine. So our advertisers would advertise because we had the database of their buyers. So then that was a big thing. So with that little money, we really had to stretch it. We had to get a lot of people to support us to come and do this together. So we put the whole magazine together. I remember it was sleepless nights, Vincent, because we had to do a mock-up to submit to the KDN for approval for a publishing license. So we don't even know, how do we even get a publishing license? No one's ever done that before. So we had to find out how does it work? How do we get publishing license? How do we put the whole mock-up together? How do we show KDN what the magazine looks like before they can give us a license? So we did all that, cut and paste and sticking on and getting it binded. And then I also had a friend who came in to support us, who was a designer. So she was the one who put the whole design of the magazine together. So that was how we did. And then, praise the Lord, we actually got the license and they said, okay, so we were given the publishing license. So we started putting things together in November, December, January. And then in 1995, I think somewhere in May, if I'm not wrong, we launched our very first Hospitality Asia edition. So that was the beginning of our publishing journey. So we started doing that. We then had a lot of advertiser support. That was doing well. And then we then launched another magazine. So we decided to go into retail and created a magazine called Retail World Asia. So retail was then to serve the supermarkets, the hypermarkets, the retail scene, the shopping malls and all that. So that was the next market that we were in. And that was doing very well. Then with that magazine, we decided to go into consumer magazine. So we created, at that time, I already invited my dad. So I invited my father, my late father in and said, hey, Dad, don't retire. Why don't you come on and help us out with the editorial, because he likes to write. But he was writing children's books. So he was saying, what am I supposed to do? I write children's books. I don't write about food. I don't write about wine. But I said, no, it's a good experience. Why don't you come on board? And he did, after much persuasion. He came on board, he started writing for us, started doing all the write-ups for hotels and restaurants and food and wine, and then that was it. That was the day he fell in love with it, and And that was the last day that he ever went back into his children's publishing business, right? So then he came on board with us, and then we started launching more and more magazines. So from 1994, we were expanding. We were doing well. We were expanding. We expanded really fast. At one time, I think we had like 60, 70 staff, and we had up to 7, 8 magazines. So we were doing that all the way to year 2000. So 94 to 2000. So in between 94 to 2000, we did have our ups and downs. You know, we had trouble like looking for the right staff. I mean, these are all the usual business issues, right? And they were, and at that time, so we had our company called Ernest and Ong, so it was E&O, and we got so popular, so famous because of, you know, the amount of magazines we were bringing out. So we also were then called upon by the E&O company that owns properties and all that, to say, oh, you can't use the same name. You know, and we didn't even know, like, oh my God, okay, there was the same name, so we were asked to change our name. So that was when we changed it to World Asian Media, so we then became, under a media company. So from that time, all the way up to 2000, I think in the year of 2000 in December, that was the first ever experience in life that I've ever had, that what I would call it as, I think it was the most devastating life experience that anyone could have. Anyone. It's unimaginable. It was so devastating. It was traumatizing. It was oh my God. You know, it was like as if, you know, my soul has been taken out from my body. It was just so, how would I really put it? And I'm so lost with words, because I remember in December, on the 7th of December of 2000, we did an anniversary celebration. So Stevens and I at that time decided and said, why don't we do like a party, like an anniversary party? And it was for the magazine, I think it was for Travel and Dine and for Fitness World. So both these magazines turned 1, and we decided to do a party at Emporium. So we invited all our advertisers, our business partners, our friends, and everyone else. We had a huge party on the 7th of December, 2000. And people came, you know, said hello. So after the party, and at the party, I kind of felt, there was something a little amiss about Stevens. Like, he was not the typical jovial, energetic kind of person that he is. But it was a little bit of a play down of energy on that day. So I was thinking, you know, I find it a bit strange, but maybe because we're tired. So we went home and we had supper. And remembered I made supper. And then after that, we went to bed. And I think in the middle of the night, I think I remember hearing he was, you know, throwing up in the bathroom. And I thought, maybe it was a bit, you know, the drinks and stuff. So I kind of like, okay, that was fine. And then on the 8th of December, 2000, I woke up at 7 a.m., about 7 a.m. And I remember, and it's still so vivid here in my mind. And I remember when I woke up and I looked at the phone, and it was 7 a.m. And then I looked to my side and I saw Stephen still sleeping. And then I remember looking to the front and I saw there was a fan. And for some reason, I felt there was something not right. So I turned back again to my left and I just said, hey, darling, I'm gonna wake up for coffee. I'll make a coffee. And there's no response. So then, it's, you know, the strange thing is, at that moment, when I know there was no response, at that moment, I kind of knew, like, you know, there's something that plays in you that you kind of know that there's something not right. Like, you know, he's gone or he's passed away or whatever. But in reality, in physical life, you don't want to see it as that, and I went like, you know, oh, you know, wake up, darling, and And there was no movement. And I thought, what happened? So I immediately jumped out of bed and I looked at him, and then he was very peaceful, right? But then it was purple, and then I touched him, it was cold. And that was the time when reality hit. And that was the moment. I don't know whether it was at 7:10, 7:08 a.m., whatever, how many minutes, it felt long. But at that time is when reality hits me and said, Jennifer, he's not here anymore, right? So then I called for my maid and I said, call the ambulance, and then I rang my parents. And the strange part is I couldn't even say the word. And all I told my parents was, I called my mom, she didn't pick up. I called my dad and I said, Stephen's gone. And he said, gone where? And I said, he's gone. And I couldn't even say the word, like Stephen's passed away or Stephen's, it was just impossible. And I remember it was really in a very traumatic state. And then I said to my dad, where's mom? Ask her to call the ambulance. That was when my dad got it to say he's gone and what it really meant. And then it took a while and the ambulance came. My son at that time was 4. My eldest boy was 4. And it was unfortunate that, that he had to witness all that. And, so then when the ambulance came and that to clear everything. And at that time, I was 28. So I just turned 28. And my son just turned 4, right? And it was in December. So it was just, I think I was living like a zombie. I was just a walking zombie. I was functioning as in I was doing things. I was arranging for the funeral and I was arranging for everything and, making sure there was help, the people were making sure that my son was fine. And then the shock came with the company because then, I can't remember, somebody rang the office and said, we're closing. And they say, why? And say, boss is gone. It's like, what, boss is gone? Again, it was just unspeakable word, right? That it just doesn't come out. And then they say, he's gone, until someone else say he's passed away and said, no, it can't be. We just saw him last night. Everyone saw him last night, right? And then the clients who came, the advertisers who came, the partners who came, everyone who came who actually saw us last night had shaken his hand, congratulated him, took photos with him. We were giving out prizes, they were receiving prizes. It was a complete shock to the entire industry that we were serving, right? Nobody could really comprehend or believe it. It was just like that. And, and then, and I remember for the whole month, it was just, I was completely lost. I was, like I said, I don't know, it was like a soul taken out of me. It was just walking zombie going on. I remember I was drinking every night. I was just drowning myself with alcohol, and I was just going, and after the funeral was gone, I don't remember going back to the office. I wasn't, back in the office. I think the office, the managers were running it. And I was just driving around the house. I was just in complete craziness at that time. But at the same time, I was, thank God, it was not a suicidal moment for me, or it was not, I think it was just complete darkness and complete depression. And again, right, we don't seek help. We don't know where to get help. We don't have mentors. I don't have a mentor. I didn't have a coach. So it was, and at that kind of time, like, even when people want to help, you kind of drive, kind of say, no, I want my space and everything else. So after all that, I think I said I thought I grieved, but I don't think I really grieved. So the whole month of December, it all finished and came in January. When it came in January, that was January 2001. And then I woke up in reality and said, Jen, you can't go on like that. This is not going to help. You have a business, it's running, there are people to take care of. At that time, I had like 70 staff. I had a huge office and I had a 4-year-old son. and I needed to move out of the place that we were living in and move back with my parents. So it was at 28 years old, that was the time. I think when it came to January, it was the time where this, what I would call it, the seed of faith really started planting itself. Like, what am I gonna do? Okay, wake up in reality. What am I gonna do? What do I wanna do? What needs to be done? So that was the time when I decided to say, okay, let's call the accountants in, let's call everyone in, what's happening? Because during the time of the business, Stevens was running the business. I was a lot in sales. I was doing sales and marketing. I was doing training. And my late father was doing the editorial. So that's how we split, the roles. And so I needed to know, okay, so what's happening to the company? So I got the accountants in and sat down and said, okay, now tell me, where are we? Where am I, right? And that was the day in January. I can't remember the date. Maybe it was 2nd or 3rd of January or something. And that was the day when I found out that the company had expanded really fast, and we were so fast. I mean, of course, it was a marketing skill, a marketing strategy that was introduced, but we expanded so fast that the company was in a heavy debt. So we had a lot of debts that was not paid, and continuing to have to keep the business going with, I don't know, 7, 8 titles, 70 staff. What am I going to do? And there was a new magazine that was going to launch. There was a women's magazine that I personally created that I wanted to launch it in February. It was already planned, editorial has been done, the layout has been done, advertisers have been secured. The only question is, do we proceed to print and do we proceed to launch? So at that point, I don't know, you call it, some people say being stubborn, some people say, oh, maybe it's faith, maybe it's courage, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I mean, whatever it is. But at that point, my question was, do I want to go on or do I want to give up, right? So the accountants asked me the same question. What do you want to do? So you have debts and you have to pay. So you either continue with the business and pay the debts, or you give up and do other things and pay the debts. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still debts and you still have to pay. But the amount was quite huge, the volume was quite huge. So again, it was, a never give up thing in me. I think I'm, born with this determination, a combination of determination and fighting spirit and courage, and just say, look, I got to do. So my question was to my parents, when they asked me, are you going to do this? And I said, look, I'm 28. I have a 4-year-old son. I have a business which is in debt. So what's the best possibility that I can do? It's to continue the business and fight, right? Of course, they weren't keen because I was alone, and said, how do you do this on your own? And I said, whatever. I mean, there must be a way. There must be a way to do this. And I'll figure it out, right? So, and there was a battle, between my parents and I. Said, oh, you shouldn't do it, And I said, what do you expect me to do if I don't do it? At the end of the day, I still have to pay. Even if I come out and work, I still have to pay. So I remember the conversation ended with me asking them this question. I said, you might think that I might not make it 100%, but even if you're right, I said, can you give me that 1% chance? Okay, 99% it won't work, but 1% chance I might work, I might make it, right? Can you give me that 1%? Just that 1%. And I will try that, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, at least I know I've tried. So that was what I asked them, to give me the blessings, which they said yes, okay. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. So that 1% chance that I asked for was what I call the seed of faith, was my faith. Because I really, really told myself that if there is a way, there will be. If there's a will, there'll always be a way. No matter what happens, I will fight it through and I will just do whatever it takes to make it happen, whatever it takes. Because I was looking at the business that we've built, I was looking at the staff, I was looking at all the things that I've done together with Stevens. I'm not just going to give it up just because he has passed away. So then I think it's what people say, oh, you really need to believe in yourself. You have to believe in what you want to do. Yes, I do have that belief, right? I mean, we built a business together from 20,000 ringgit. But I think what was really present was when I was able to really have my alone time and really build that faith in me. The faith that I'm going to make it. Yeah, I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to be in the black. I'm going to take this company further. I'm going to take this business further. I'm going to build a life that would be really good for myself and my son. At that time, it was really built on that trust and having that faith and keeping that faith no matter what, really protecting it and no matter what people say to me. How many people have told me, don't do it, Jen. It's tough. You can't do it alone. You've got too much debts. You can't handle this alone. You can't, continue with the business alone. Who's going to help you? Who's going to do this for you? Who's going to do that for you? There's so many unsolicited advices and unsolicited suggestions that was given to me, which is what we don't need in life when we're in crisis, right? So I think my deepest crisis at that time, and it was my first crisis ever in life experienced, and it was so deep, so dark, so tough, and was just so difficult to get out. And if it wasn't for the faith that I had, I don't think I'll be able to pull myself out from that darkness. Definitely not, for sure, right? So that was when I decided and said, I'm going to make things right. So then I had a meeting with all the team. I went on and capped the company and capped the business to continue and see where it would go. And then it came to a point where I said, okay, we need to cut the coat according to the cloth. We need to really cut down the size. So then I decided to cut out some of the magazines that has taken up quite a toll on us and downsize the ship. So then I asked for a voluntary resignation and said, anybody, this is a situation. So I told everybody the truth and what's happening. And we need to save this ship, so I need to downsize the ship, right? So who wants to stay and who wants to go? I was I think it was one of it's very vivid here in my mind as I speak. How do you say? It was a situation where, oh my God, it was the toughest time to have a conversation with the team, to have to break such a news to them. Yeah. So then we did that, we downsized the ship, and I think sometime in February, so we said, no, I kept the business going for about a couple of months, I think till about April. And sometime in May or so, I decided to say, okay, we're going to restructure the whole business and restructure the whole company and start all over again. So that was the day that, in 2001 was the time that middle of 2001 was the time I decided to say, let's start from scratch and start all over again and build everything. So that was what we did. That was the time where the new company was formed and we decided to move ahead with the new company that was named as WAP. So we went into World Asia Publishing, and then we focused into just publishing work in 2001. Hi, I'm Jennifer Ong, and this is my story.